Hey, hi everyone. Hello, everyone who is here for date night number 4. I am here with our guests, Nalini Singh and see Mihalik, Jessie Mihalik.
Mihalik. So close.
Mihalik, damn it. This is what
It's
I should have
fine.
asked. This is what I should have asked during the final 2 minutes in the green room.
I
This is
will
what
answer to
happens.
anything.
This is what happens when you are overly confident. You're like, yeah, I know what vowels sound like, but I don't. Okay. Hello, welcome everyone to date night. This is the 4th date night. Thank you to everyone who has attended before and is coming back. Thank you to people who are here today for the first time. And thank you to Loyalty Bookstore, to Hannah, who is somewhere there in the crowd, and who will be popping up from time to time to post links. Thank you, Hannah, for hosting us and giving us a place for these fun romance events. So if you have questions, there's an ask a question box at the bottom of the screen, and you can put your question in there. I am going to request that you do not put any spoilers in the when you ask a question. Everyone hasn't had a chance to read the book yet, or if people are catching up with the Side Changeling series, try to keep the questions a little bit vague. I know it can be hard if you have a specific question, but we don't want to spoil anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled. And before I read the bios, I do want to point out that I am wearing Jessie's nail polish and eyeshadow, which you can't see from Dragonsworn Cosmetics. Has some Polaris Rising eyeshadow and nail polish, and now I had an excuse to wear it. So if you want to check out Dragonsworn, they have great cosmetics, and I know this sounds like an ad. I actually just really like their stuff, and they have some romance stuff, so support them. Okay, so to get started, we have Nalini Singh, New York Times bestselling author who's passionate about writing. Though she's traveled as far afield as the deserts of China, the highlands of Scotland, and the frozen landscapes of Antarctica, it is the journey of the imagination that fascinates her the most. She's beyond delighted to be able to follow her dream as a writer. Nalini lives and works in beautiful New Zealand. Jessie Mihalik. Okay. I'm sorry, that's really annoying to do that when people mispronounce your name. Jessie Mihalik has a degree in computer science and a love of all things geeky. A software engineer by trade, Jessie now writes full-time from her home in Texas. When she's not writing, she can be found playing co-op video games with her husband, trying out new board games, or reading books pulled from her overflowing bookshelves. Nalini's latest release is Alpha Night, which was released this past Tuesday. And Jessie's latest release is Chaos Reigning, which was released last week?
In May.
2 weeks ago. Wait, 2 weeks ago. Because time has no meaning at this point.
Time has no meaning.
So thank you both so much for being here. And can you each take a minute to kind of give a summary to our audience of your latest release? Nalini?
Okay, we should have sorted this out beforehand, right?
Just have it's a little chaos reigning in the chat. Okay.
That was a good one. All right. So my latest is Alpha Night, which I actually remembered to keep beside me. So this is the US North American cover, and this is the UK cover. It's very different, both beautiful. And it is the next book in the Side Changeling Trinity series. But if you've never read any of that series, you can jump into this book because you're going into a whole new wolf pack. So you get introduced to everyone anyway, you know. And it's a story of Selinka Durov, who is the alpha of the Black Edge Wolves, and an Arrow, who is like a super soldier of the Psi race. They have enormous, mental powers, but they've been taught not to feel emotion. And Ethan has had, a worse upbringing than even most. So it was a fun book to write. I love going back into that world. And the quote that I think best encapsulates this book is Ethan says he is the knight to her queen. And so he's got this, he's like, I think of him as like a warrior, but a warrior who is very comfortable in himself. And he is very happy to be behind her because she is the alpha. So it's a really great dynamic and just really great characters.
Yes, I thought so too.
Yeah, I thought so too. I read it. It was amazing. So, my latest release is Chaos Reigning, and I only have the ARC, but the other cover is the same, just without this handy little sticker there. And it is about a badass space princess who goes to a house party to try and figure out who is responsible for her brother's kidnapping. And she is sort of a party girl, and she's got this front where her social skills are really the thing that is like her superpower. But her sister, who is overprotective, will not let her go to this enemy house party without taking some backup. And so she arranges for a bodyguard to go with her, 2 bodyguards. And one of them is Alex, the hero. And he is going to pose as her fake lover. So she tries to leave him behind. It does not work. They sort of have a mutual grudging fake relationship as they go. Yeah. So if you like the fake relationship, if you like bodyguard romance, there's only one bed at some point. So this is the final book in the trilogy. Like I try to jam like all the goodness in there to really cap off the Consortium Rebellion trilogy. So the first book is Polaris Rising, the second book is Aurora Blazing, and the newest one is Chaos Reigning.
Yay, thank you. So both of these books, Jessie, yours is sci-fi romance. Nalini's, I think yours is usually classified as paranormal romance because they're shifters. But the world building is sci-fi world building. So it's kind of a mix of both to me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about world building. I guess we could start off a bit with world building. For both of you, so Jessie, you're finishing up this series, and Nalini, this is a spinoff of another long ongoing series. Can you talk a little bit about how you handle world building? Not necessarily like writing tips, but what is the experience for you? How do your world building ideas come to you? How do you wrangle them? And kind of what is your world building manifesto, I guess.
Jessie, do you want to take this one?
Sure. For me, world building is completely character driven. So I generally start with characters first, and then I see how they interact with the world, and that is how my world gets built. So when I first started with Polaris Rising, really the only thing that I knew about the world is that it was set in space, it was on a spaceship, and that Ada was being captured. She was running away from a fake marriage, and why was she doing that? And so then like all the pieces sort of build as I get to know the character. And I just threw in things that are fun. Like it would be amazing to be on a spaceship that could travel faster than light and see other planets. Like that would be awesome. I would love to do that. I mean, I'm kind of too scared to do that, but brave me would love to do that. So, my world building really is very, very character driven. And I am a pantser, not a plotter, which means that I don't write to outline, generally speaking. So I don't know what's going to happen generally. Like when I start writing, I sort of have an idea of the middle. I sometimes have an idea of the ending, but it's sort of exploratory as I'm writing. So my world builds as I write.
I'm very similar. in terms of the world building, I tend to build it through the eyes of the characters. So what they see is what we see, what they learn is what we learn. Because I have overarching plot lines through my series, there is one thing I do think about always when I start is where am I going to end? Not necessarily where I'm going to end the series, but where the story arc is going to end. Because if I know that, then my brain instinctively seems to put together the pieces as you go, because I think it's really important with overarching storylines to know the end point, because otherwise there's this temptation to sort of, fritter away or like lose the tension. And I learned this by watching television, like, the TV series where they've thought about it and everything sort of clicks into place. And then there's the ones where they get to the end and they're like, oh, not quite sure what to do. Oh, so we'll just throw everything at it.
Yeah, it was purgatory. Yeah.
So it's instinctive in that way, that when I write each book, it's just I explore the world through the eyes of the characters. And so we're constantly learning different things, but it's very organic. But yeah, that overarching plot line, that's always something I've thought of before I write the first book.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm honestly going to say that I'm a little bit shocked, because I thought you were going to be like, I have a huge spreadsheet with every single thing.
I'm amazed she doesn't.
So, I mean, that's just genius. I'm just going to say that. But because, like, seriously, like when you're reading and you're like, oh, that's like from that book, and that's like from, like the picture with the guy with the straight conspiracy theories thing. And like there are so many little things that come back. And I'm sorry if you thought I was going to be like professional during this. I'm just going to be fan. I'm just going to be a fangirl. No, but like, so I think that's so interesting that you kind of have like this overarching theme, and like somewhere in the back of your head there's like a repository that's like, oh yes, put this here for later. So that's cool. And it's like interesting to think of it as how that can work in a series like Jessie's, which is a trilogy, a kind of more compact story, or basically an arc, a shorter arc than has been going on in Side Changeling and Guild Hunters. But one thing that I do like, that I think is an overlap from what you both were saying, and that I enjoy, especially in romance series with a lot of romance where there are different couples who are, in each book is a different couple looking at the same world, is what you were saying, Nalini, where kind of each book, when it's character driven, like Jessie was saying, how in each book you're kind of seeing different things about the world because of the character's place in the world, and kind of, which is especially fun and from a reading, and I'm sure a writing perspective, when you're working on things where there are like rebellion, like in Jessie's series, or in your series where there are just like all of these, different world changing things going on. So the next thing I wanted to talk about that I think is really important in both of your series is family. And like both of you have, in a lot of sci-fi romance and paranormal romance, there is the idea of found family, which is, of course, really, whether it's the ragtag in a space opera, like, the ragtag gang who all gets together on a spaceship and starts meeting up and making friends and finding the family they didn't have, or in, Nalini in your series, with the idea of family, the different ideas of family, and in the Side Changeling series, for example, the different ideas of family between human, Psi, and Changeling. So I wanted to talk a little bit how each of you kind of approached that for your series that you're working on. Jessie, one thing that I found really interesting about your series is that it's a space opera, it's a sci-fi romance. It has space opera. And usually that is just like, okay, this character is alone and they have their found family. But one really interesting thing about yours is that, there's this family that by everything else in the world that they inhabit, they should be at each other's throat. and they are very supportive and helpful to each other throughout the series. Like, the plot of this book is, like you said, the heroine's sister has been like, no, you need a bodyguard. It's not, which, so I kind of really enjoyed that aspect of it, of this family that kind of, instead of turning on each other in this world, has instead grown closer and is they are very protective of one another. So can you talk a little bit about your family, the family in the series, and kind of your approach to family as opposed to some more common sci-fi romance family tropes?
Yeah, I love having both found family and real family because, as you said, like in my world, this family, these siblings should be at each other's throat. But the oldest brother decided to take a different path. And so he decided that he was going to protect his younger siblings no matter what. And because of that, like, he built a really tightly knit family unit that doesn't necessarily exist in the other high houses. So there's 3 high houses in my world. The trilogy focuses on House von Hasenberg and the 3 sisters in it. So I liked having, like, you often get that lone hero, like the lone hero against the world. And I was like, you know what's nice? Friendship, family, like having people that you can count on. So I didn't want to tell a story necessarily where it was one person against the world. Now, they still are part of a powerful family and they still are trying to protect each other. So there still are quite a lot of secrets going on. But when it really comes down to it, like, they have each other's backs. Like, if something were to happen, any of the siblings would drop whatever they were doing and like rush to aid somebody else. So I had that as like my backbone. And then while they had that, there were situations that prevented that family from being together all the time. So they collected people in their found family as they went along, so that because they'd had this really strong family, like, even though their parents are not great, let's say, they had this sibling family. So they knew what that should look like, and they collect people as they go. And I love having the hodgepodge of, just collecting people and like, let's all be family. Let's look out for each other, as opposed to like trying to just stomp on people as you're, rising to power or doing whatever. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is I really enjoy the like warm family cooperation as opposed to single-handedly stomping.
And yeah, I mean, I was thinking of this because I was thinking how, these 2 series kind of play on they have overlapping things, but kind of Jessie's, yours is leans a bit more heavily toward the fantasy of a family that will that you're born into, that will always have your back, which isn't always the case in real life. And Nalini, your series kind of really leans into found family. I mean, there's the family you're born into with, particularly with the shifter packs, but also kind of the fantasy of like, even if you were born into a bad family or a family that didn't appreciate you, you will eventually find your place and your family. So can you talk a little bit about, how you think of families in the side-changeling world, and for me, because with Alpha Knight, and again, no spoilers, but for me, it felt very much like, for the series, it seems like a lot of the overarching themes are about connection. And this one really felt like really amped up in an amazing way. And for me, when I was reading, I was like, double found family. So obviously I enjoyed that. So it's kind of like the series already has that theme going in it, and this one really like reinforces that idea of found family, the family that you can kind of be sorted into, and the family that you can find through friendship and affection. So can you talk a little bit about, found family in Alpha Knight?
Yeah, so
Or for Ethan particularly?
Ethan, yeah. So it's just in general what I realized. It actually took me writing several books of my own to realize that I love reading. The books I most tend to gravitate towards are the ones with families of some kind, you know, with a found family or the one you're born into, the one you create for yourself. And then I realized, oh, that's what I write as well. So, and it really is the bedrock of the Side Changeling series and even the Guild Hunter series. You know, whatever I've written, even my contemporaries, there is a family of some kind in the background because I really like how different types of connections form. So when you first begin the Side Changeling series, like you said, the first family you sort of run into is the packs. You know, they're a very tight knit group. But then as the series grows, in Alpha Knight in particular, there's interlocking families. So Ethan, you know, he's this arrow, he's kind of disconnected from everyone. And yet at the same time, the arrows are becoming a family under Aiden. And he's made that promise, you know, they are going to back you no matter what. And even if Ethan doesn't see them that way at the start, you know, Aiden is there saying, we're still going to be here to back you. And then with Selenka, you know, she's without spoilers, she's got problematic issues with her family, and yet for the pack, she is the head of the family. And so there's all these different types of families linking in, and it really is one of the things I love most about the Side Changing series is that you get to see that we're never just isolated families, whether that's a found family or the family you're born into, that there are families that crisscross, you know, and you may be part of two families, and that's particularly true for Ethan. You know, he becomes part of two families, and neither one, he doesn't have to give up one to be part of the other. So I just love all those relationships that are happening in the background to like the romantic relationships, because I think in the real world, that's how we exist. You know, we're all in multiple little families, and they all affect who we are as human beings. So yeah, it's I really love it. I think probably the hardest books for me to write are where people are super isolated, because I really like that interaction with other people, because we show who we are in different ways to different people. So if you see, for example, Selenka interacting with the pups in her pack versus how she interacts with her lieutenants versus how she interacts with Ethan, you know, it's all building her character in just a way that's natural.
Yeah. Yeah. I really also clearly enjoy reading those kinds of stories. But I really, and like when we were talking about world building and arcs earlier, and I think one of the fun things in the Side Changeling series is that there are family arcs as well as, you know, the plot-driven arcs and all of the things going on in the background and beside it. But you also see these families coming together in the background, or families who probably maybe shouldn't have been, similar to the Van Housenbergs, who maybe shouldn't have been as close to one another as they are, like the Merkins. So I think it's really, you know, I can just keep talking about this for a long time. I won't, but I really love how that played out in both of those series and how it's continuing to play out in the Side Changeling series. To talk a little bit about tropes, bring it back a little to the romance side. One thing I thought was cool was that both of these are in a way bodyguard romances, but taken from a bit of a different angle. And like, I'm not going to say what I was about to say from my little list, because that might be a spoiler for Alpha Knight, but taken from like different perspectives. And in Nalini's world, there's like the paranormal aspect to it. of these people coming together in an unexpected way that is not a fake relationship, but I felt like there is, when I was reading both of them, they're not the same, but examining the tropes, in Alpha Knight, there is a bit of the fun of a fake relationship bodyguard romance, because that is similar to Chaos Reigning, because it's these people getting to know each other in this situation. But for both of you, if you could talk a little bit about the appeal of the bodyguard / protector and how that plays out, because you have, these very different characters. So obviously the trope is a protector / bodyguard, but it plays out very differently in the two books. And if you could talk a little bit about how that plays out, like for each of your characters, for all of your characters. If you want to start, Jessie.
Okay, I love bodyguard romance because I am a huge fan of forced proximity, which if you are, going to be guarding somebody, you have to be close to them. And so there's a lot of fun things that you can then play with. And I liked the fact that it was going to be sort of antagonistic at the beginning, because Kat doesn't think that she needs a bodyguard. She thinks that she has it under control. She knows that it's dangerous. Like, she's not trying to be, completely oblivious to the danger, but she thinks that she can handle it herself. And so when her older sister kind of saddles her with this bodyguard, she tries, she's resentful, but she knows that it's like not his fault. Like, he is repaying a debt to her sister by doing this. So she tries to get over her resentment and like make it work as a fake relationship. And then as they are, pretending, as happens occasionally, some of those pretend feelings get closer and closer to real feelings, which I adore. Like, this is a trope that I love to read. And so writing it was a blast. Like, it's one of my favorites. So I hope that other people like bodyguard romance and like the fake relationship trope thrown in with it, because I had a lot of fun writing it.
With my one, so it's mating at first sight, which we've never had in the series. So it is two people getting to know each other. In terms of the protector thing, it was interesting in this book because Selenka is the alpha of the wolves. So she is the protector. And yet at the same time, Ethan feels very protective of her. So it was a very different balance, because he couldn't sort of come in and take over and be like, I'm going to protect you and this is how it's going to be. He had to, for their relationship to work, he had to always understand that she can protect herself. She is the wolf alpha. She can handle herself as well as him. It just, what they had to do was they had to work with their different strengths. So he is he's psi, so he's got those psychic abilities, and so he can protect her in ways that she wouldn't necessarily be able to protect herself, and vice versa, because there are multiple times in the book that Selenka is the one protecting Ethan. And so they're both protectors of each other, which I think is how a relationship should work. But with them, it takes a while for them to get to that point where, but from the start, Ethan understands who she is, and I think that's key. He understands that she is, she could take him down. He literally says that, I think, in the first chapter. If she wanted to, she could take him down. So they begin on a very equal footing, and I think that's the only way this book could have worked. Because neither one of them is trying to push into the other's space. I mean, they push in other ways. Ethan's always like, you need to see a healer. You've got like a wound. And she's like, whoa, like, why are you telling me things? But then she's like, he needs to eat, and then she's feeding him, because wolves have this thing of like, you must eat, you must be healthy. So, I loved playing with that. I loved playing with the idea of what does it take to be with someone so strong, and then still being yourself. Ethan is very much himself the entire book, and yet he is very much, like he says, a knight to her queen.
Yeah. I did love that the book kind of has like two super deadly protagonists, but is also in a way kind of very gentle at the same time. I mean, there's like a lot of, you know, not gentle things going on, but their relationship with each other is not always gentle because, you know, she's a wolf alpha, he is an arrow. But like the way they kind of get to know each other and support each other, like, and I just found that very interesting because it could have been played in such a different way given both of their strengths. But on that note, Salenka is a female alpha. Is this the first female alpha heroine in the book, in the series?
Yeah. So we've had female alphas. There are female alphas in the series, but this is the first one where it's the protagonist. Yeah.
And so something I was thinking about with both of your series, and like Nalini, obviously you have all of these badass heroines who can like kill you either with their mind or with their claws or just very easily. Jessie, like you have this series, like the first book starts out with like, you know, badass space princess and like this trio of sisters who have all of these strengths. But the thing that I found interesting is kind of like, so how you kind of like have this subversion of female romance heroine, but also like a subversion of the female romance. See, this is what I think about when I'm reading. So like, for instance, in the first book, in Polaris Rising, you know, the heroine is a badass, but it's not like she's a brawler. She knows she can fight, but she knows that's not her greatest strength. And in Chaos Reigning, we have the heroine who is seen as kind of flighty and bubbly, who has a different kind of strength and who's different from, I won't say more than she appears, but different than she appears to people. So kind of you know, Nalini, we have this, okay, we'll get back to Salenka. Jessie, can you talk a bit about writing the heroines and kind of what you wanted for the heroines in the series, or what kind of thoughts went into writing these particular heroines with these skill sets and strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, all three of my sisters were brought up in a high house and raised to be able to fight and spy and do all of these amazing things because they were expected to do that when they married for the good of the house. Like they were expected to spy on their husbands and see what their businesses are. But fighting is not the only strength. Like physical strength is one option, but that's not the only option. And I wanted to show that because all three of them kind of had the same upbringing, but they all turned out very differently depending on, you know, what happened in their lives. So Ada like completely split and was like, I am not marrying. I would rather be on the run and separated from my sisters who I love, but I don't love them enough and they would not want me to stay here and do something that's going to make me miserable. So she's kind of a tactician. She knows that she can't outfight a lot of people, but she has a lot of other strengths as well. Bianca, the second book heroine, she did marry for the good of the house. It was terrible. It did really not well for her. And so she has like survivor strength. Like she knows kind of how things can go wrong, and she doesn't want that for any of her other siblings. And so she has information. She's made this network where she can help anybody else who's kind of being strong-armed into marriage to escape and be able to go on the run and not have their life ruined necessarily. So she kind of has an information network. And then Katerina, the Chaos Reigning heroine, she has decided that she is going to marry for the good of the house, maybe, because the person that her father is kind of pushing her towards is it kind of makes her skin crawl. So she hasn't said a firm no yet, but she has decided that her power, the thing that she can do, is build social connections. Like, she calls it her charm offensive, because she builds goodwill for the house with all of these other houses, because their house is at war, and so the lower houses are still sort of picking sides. So if she can go and, you know, be charming and bubbly and use her social skills, like, that's what she considers her power. And so they're kind of they're all powerful and they're all strong, but they're all strong in different ways, and it's not just physical strength.
Nice. And, you know, clearly in Alpha Knight, you have a female alpha. But I think, you know, over the course of Side Changeling and Side Changeling Trinity, there are all these different depictions of strength. You know, there's physical strength and, like, you know, Zyra being able to, like, pop some guy's eyeball out, but also, you know, the one of the things that is very evident in Selenka too, but not only in Selenka, but in all of the alphas, no matter their gender, is that how did I want to phrase that? That, you know, the alphas are alphas because of their strength, but not only because of their physical strength. And in this world, their actual greater strength is their capacity to love. So I thought that, can you talk a bit about, like, taking this kind of, you know, because in general, especially in romance, when we talk about alpha, it's like alpha, strong, you know, possessive and all of that stuff. But I really feel like over the course of the Side Changeling Trinity series, like, yes, they are possessive and they're strong, but also a lot of that is focused on, like, the emotional connections they have with people, and not just like, I'm in charge and you need to respect me. I mean, that's the sign of someone who is bad. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you kind of thought about that when writing Selenka? And what did you feel any kind of pressure, not from anyone else, but, like, you know, writing the first female alpha in the series, did you know from the beginning how you wanted her to be, or did you kind of have to go back and forth and figure out how she was going to embody the alpha spirit?
Yeah, so with alphas from the start, I built on a base of protectiveness, right? So these are people who feel very protective about the people, and these are the good alphas. So we have had examples of bad alphas in the series, and the goodest, the best alphas, you know, they have these huge hearts, and they can wipe the tears of a packmate who's hurting and give them a hug, and they can take down physically someone who is attacking their packmates. But there have been places where I've talked in the books about how alphas who are really, really respected, they're not necessarily the most physically strong, and yet they remain alpha because the rest of the pack supports them physically.
Yeah.
So it's this it's very clear in the books that the best alphas, that it's their ability to love and their ability to command respect from the pack that makes them alpha, because an alpha is only alpha as long as the pack, you know, is backing them.
Mm-hmm.
So with Selenka, it really was very character based. So I didn't kind of feel like, oh, I'm doing a female alpha, I have to somehow write her differently. I was thinking I'm writing an alpha, and it's the same way, you know, I thought about when I was writing Hawk's book, for example, or Aiden's book, because these are all, you know, alpha characters. And it was about, she is a good alpha. She is very respected. So it's like, what is it about her that makes her good? You know, what is it about her that makes her pack love her and would go to bat for her against anyone? And so that's how I thought of her. And then I think I gave, there was no need to sort of make her a super alpha because it was the first female alpha. She was very much herself. And that was my challenge as a writer, was to show Selenka who is Selinka,
Yeah.
and I think it helps that in the series I've talked about different kinds of strength a lot. I know that right back at the start, you know, the empaths, it's a very particular kind of strength. They can't hit people, and yet they are incredibly powerful in the world. So in the same way, I was like, okay, Selinka is who she is. She's an alpha wolf, but she is also, you know, she has her friendships. You know, she's got colored hair. You know, she dyes her hair, and she's very much at peace with who she is. And so it was showing that inner person that that makes the pack follow her. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I have asked you both many questions, but now time is starting to get short, so I'm going to head to the ask a question box. The first question, so people can upvote. Nalini, will Bluebell get a book?
Don't worry, I won't leave you hanging. That's all I'm going to say.
Also, will we see more of Pax and Theo Marshall?
Yes.
Okay, Jessie, those first two questions were from Alina and from KM. This question is from Elisa, who says hello, and she says, Jessie, I love your Consortium series as well as the Rogue Queen. After your next trilogy is completed, will you be writing any more novels in the Consortium verse? I would love to read more stories, especially HEA for Hannah, Ferdinand, and Benedict.
I do have the idea for another 3-book arc in the universe. It will have to be worked in with my contracted books because the publisher considers the series done right now. So the answer is hopefully. We will see 3 more books.
What was that?
Sorry, there was feedback. Hold on a second. Okay. There's feedback on your end, Jessie, so we didn't hear the end of it. Nalini, can you talk right now?
Yes, I can talk. Yeah.
Okay. I'm muting you for a second, Jessie, because maybe your headphones or something are causing a feedback. I'm not sure. But I'm going to mute you for a second, then I'm going to unmute you for the question. Okay, sorry. There is always a gremlin ready to jump, a tech gremlin ready to jump. Someone had oh no, I heard it. Okay. Someone asked a question about the transition to working on a thriller, which was for me, but can also be for Nalini, since Nalini writes thrillers too. And the transition to working on a thriller, for me at least, was a little, I just got to go a bit darker than, okay, Jessie's reconnecting. Hopefully she will be back in a second. It was, since I already kind of have suspense elements in a lot of my books, let me, yay, okay, we're all good.
Okay, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That was weird. You all froze, and then I froze, and then I could hear nothing.
So I'm just talking about briefly about the transition from writing romance to thrillers, and like I already generally have suspense elements in my books anyway, but I just kind of got to lean a bit harder into that, and also to maybe go a bit darker than I would in a romance. The book does have romantic elements, and the person asked, is it okay for wimps to read. And I'm gonna say it is. You will most likely put it down at some point, because there were some points when I was writing it when I was giving myself anxiety and like getting. So I mean, I could lie to you and be like, no, it's not a horror book though. It's a thriller. It might scare you a little bit, but I think you can try it. But Nalini, how was writing?
No, I was
your
going to
thing?
interrupt and say I actually have just read Alyssa's book, and so I can answer the question for you too. It is very anxiety-inducing. Okay, so it's not. I don't think you would be like terrified if you're like that kind of a chicken. But because I say that as someone who is also a chicken sometimes, but it does have that tension that just builds and builds and builds, and I was like, what's going on? I was reading I'm reading an advanced copy on like an electronic copy. Otherwise, I swear, if I was not reading an electronic copy, I would have just flipped to the back to okay, what the hell, like to like reassure myself what the answer was going to be. But it's a fantastic book. It's just such a good book, and it's what's the title? When No One Is Watching. Do I have that right?
Yeah, when no one is watching.
Yes.
When
Yeah.
I also always call it while you were watching.
Yeah, I want to say that too.
creepy.
There's like no,
While you
it's
were
not good. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic book, and there's a lot in there. The historical stuff
Thank
that you
you.
had in there that I had no idea about. So I found it just really eye opening, and but from the thriller, just the pure thriller perspective, that building tension is like, what's going on? Is she alive? What's going on? So that was my whole response throughout reading this book.
All right. Well, I didn't know that Nalini had already read it, so like after this call, I'm gonna go be like, but I'm glad it freaked you out. Okay, I'm scrolling through the question box to see. I don't think there are many questions about who the next book is going to be about. I don't think you're going to tell us, but we will all be surprised together when we find out. Someone said they wanted a Nikita book, which I do too, but you don't have to respond to that. I'm just putting that out there.
I can talk a little bit about Nikita. I think
yay.
she's been a really interesting character because the person you meet. So Nikita has been in the series since book 1. So she is one of the longest living characters across the series, and she's quite fascinating because of the changes in her character arc. Or is it changes, or is it that we're uncovering more of her personality? And so she is a really fascinating character to write. And quite often people say, and I saw the comments as well saying, Nikita and Anthony. The thing with Nikita is you could never get a normal kind of book for her. It could never be, and then it's a happy ever after. It's with her. It's always going to be, I think, part of the series because there is so much history there. There's so much she's done. She does not have clean hands. And yet, at the same time, she's this incredibly protective person towards her child and her grandchild. She's a complicated person. She's a very complicated person, and she will continue to be complicated. But I think we're just going to keep seeing layers and layers of her, and whether she gets to a point where she can, sort of have a contented life of some kind. We'll have to see. But I have to say there's a scene in Alpha Night with her and Memory, who was from Wolf Rain. It's one of my favorite scenes. It cracked me up when I was writing it because they're just these two personalities who are just like not, like opposing, and just their little showdown was just really fun to write. So yeah, the long answer is, you'll continue to see Nikita and continue to see her growth. But it's not like she's not a character I'm sort of thinking, oh no, I'm going to write her book, because with her, it's just going to be like a continuous growth.
Okay, so we'll see what's going on, and we will just have to be like the other characters in the book, wondering what's up with her and Anthony. And we'll find out when they do. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going through the questions. Someone. So this question is I guess it can be, someone asked if you were stranded on a desert island, which book would you want to have with you? And that they didn't leave their name, so I don't know who asked it. But I'm going to take that question and merge it with one of the date night questions, which is, Nalini already said that you just finished the thriller, so don't include that. But what is one of the last things that you read or watched that you enjoyed or would recommend the date night crew? Every week I watched Crash Landing on You like a month ago, but I have to bring it up every week, every date night now. But I did just finish my first love, which is a Netflix K-drama, and it was cute. If anyone is looking for a new K-drama and hasn't watched it yet, it's on Netflix. But if you've watched anything over the past few weeks or read anything that has brought you enjoyment, that you would like to share with us.
Aside from Alyssa's book, I haven't done as much reading as I would normally, just because I had copy edits for Archangel Sun come in, and I'm writing Quiet in Her Bones, the next thriller, at the same time. So it was like this super crazy. But I think the last book I read was Sonali Dev's Recipe for Persuasion, which is just, I loved it so much because Persuasion is my favorite Austen. I always say that's the one with the romance arc, right? It has the perfect romance arc. You know, they have a history and then he comes back. Captain Wentworth. But I just think she did such a great job with this book because she's got this hero and he's sort of like, you know, I'm going to come back and kind of like, sort of, he's a bit vengeful, you know, like he wants to get her out of a system, but at heart, you know, he's a cinnamon roll. He's just adorable, and I just wanted them to be together. And yeah, it's a great book. I would totally recommend. And I actually have Crash Landing on You on my TBR or to be watched list because everybody kept talking about it, and I love K-drama as well. So, okay, that's going to be what I'm going to read and watch after I've got my book in, because it's the kind of thing I think I'm going to want to binge watch. So I don't want to start it until. But I will mention one other thing. I don't know if you get it in the US. It's this Australian crime drama called Mystery Road. They've got 2 seasons of it, and I watched season 1 like a month ago, and it's just really fantastic. It's set in the outback in this little Australian town, and he has as this detective, and he's just written as larger than life, but he's got this complicated home life, and then there's this mystery going on. It's quite dark, but it's just really well done, and yeah, so that was a good read and a good watch.
Thank you. And I know I keep seeing people looking for like small town crime stuff. So Mystery Road, we need to Google people who are interested in that.
I see a few people
Google
saying I love Mystery Road.
Oh yeah, people are watching. And Jessie, have you been reading or watching anything?
I've been reading, actually. I read both of your new releases. So I read Alpha Night just recently, which was amazing. I read The AI Who Loved Me last week because for some reason, like I know people love audiobooks, but for me, it takes more time for me to like carve out audiobook listening time than to carve out reading time. Just something with how my brain is wired up, like sitting down to read. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a thing that I can do, but sitting down to listen to something, which I know people do it when they like do dishes or clean or whatever, but that's like my brain's downtime. so I try and just do nothing. But I actually did have a question for Alyssa. Are we going to see any more books from the AI Who Loved Me, like those characters? Like, could we see any more?
Yeah.
We are. I'm working on the Reluctant Royals book, but also the second book in the AI Who Loved Me. I guess the series is called The Hive, which if you read it, I guess you know why. But the second book is Yana's book, and it's a kind of forced proximity. And I'll just leave it vague at that. Vaguely at that.
Yay, that's awesome. I'm so excited. So yeah, I loved both of those. I also read Girl Gone Viral by Alicia Rai, which is bodyguard romance. So, you know, I'm already like 100% on board. But the two main characters are just like precious, adorable cinnamon rolls. And I just wanted to like wrap them up in bubble wrap and be like, just have your HEA, like, please, like, you're amazing. And so the whole book is just like, if you want something that's just sweet and it's got some angst, but not a lot, and the characters are just like so great. So Girl Gone Viral, highly recommended.
I think double these times call for double cinnamon rolls. So.
Yes. Absolutely. Like, it's just like, it was exactly what my brain needed.
I'm going to check the questions one more time. I'm not going to be able to get to everyone's questions, but my last date night question would be, do you have a fandom or a secret, a hobby? It doesn't have to be a secret, but something that you enjoy apart from writing. Like, are you into anime? During the last K night, Kwana showed us her K-pop poster that she had hidden in the background, her K-pop band poster. So do you have anything that you enjoy decompressing with when you're not writing or reading?
For me right now, I am baking sourdough. Like, it seems like half the internet, but I have got a sourdough starter that I got from a friend. I've named him Sludge because I'm all about the very literal names. And so I'm perfecting baking bread for the first time in almost 40 years, really. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That seems like a big, like that sourdough thing. I follow it online. I'm like, wow, that's a commitment.
The only thing I know about sourdough is like, so not a couple years ago, like 8 years ago. Anyway, when I lived in New York and Mr. Cole lived here, he came one summer, he started a sourdough starter and was like, yes, you just have to feed it and keep it alive. And I was like, yeah. And that thing was done. Like, after he left, we did not name it, but sorry, sourdough. I like opened the fridge and they're like, oh no, I didn't feed you. And I have stayed away from sourdough since then, since I don't want to relive that tragedy. Okay, but before, so I guess so there were a lot of questions. A lot of the questions were about what the next books are going to be, or who the next books are going to be about. And I think this is a no spoilers date night, so we can't answer those. But thank you to everyone who asked questions, who we didn't get to the questions. Before we go, can you tell us what you are working on right now? Okay, actually, what, if you want, what your next release will be, and or what you are working on right now.
Yeah, okay, so I'm working on Quiet in Her Bones, which is my next New Zealand set thriller. It's about Nina Rai, who disappeared 10 years ago, and everybody thought, she was a socialite, she was like a trophy wife, and $250,000 disappeared the same night, and everyone thought she just took the money and said, see ya, later, bye. But then 10 years later, they discover her bones in the forest next to her home, and she's wearing the clothes from the night she disappeared. And so it's like, what happened to Nina, 10 years ago? And it's creepy. It's because it's her son who's at the forefront trying to figure out what's going on, but nothing is as it seems. And yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm really enjoying writing it. And my next book release is in November, which is Archangel's Son. If you haven't seen the covers,
it's an
North
amazing
American,
cover.
yes, it's amazing, isn't it? And the international cover, I just got really lucky. And I love that one cover has Titus and the other cover has the Hummingbird. So you put them next to each other and you've got both main characters for the books. And oh my god, I had so much. Every time I start talking about this book, I'm just like it's so much fun, because this is the first time in the series where we've got an archangel, but we've got someone who is not. So like Elena was immortal, so with her and Raphael, it's like this there's this power, push kind of thing where she has to get him to take her seriously, and put their relationship on this balanced footing, and their relationship is constantly growing and changing. And with Titus and the Hummingbird, it's a different kind of interaction, because the Hummingbird is actually older than Titus, and she's powerful in her own right. So he's like, I'm an archangel, and she's like, I don't care. So she's kind of at that space where she really doesn't give a what. So it was just so much fun, because Titus, he's this huge, larger than life character. He's used to just women loving him. Women love Titus. Titus loves women. And then there's the Hummingbird. So it's so much fun. I can't wait for people to read it. It's and it continues on like in the aftermath of what happened. There was a war in the last book, so it's what happens in the aftermath. But yeah, it's really about these two and their interactions, and excited.
Yay! And Jessie, are you able to talk about what you're working on next?
I am. I'm working on two things. I'm working on The Queen's Triumph, which is the third in my Rogue Queen novella series. It's a self-pub series. It does have a release date now. It is coming out December 8th, which means I have to finish writing it like super fast. It will go up on my blog as a free serial rough draft form, probably in late summer, because as I said, I have to finish writing it. And then I'm also working on the first novel from my next trilogy for Voyager, which comes out in early 2022, which is I pitched it as a gender-swapped Mandalorian with more kissing. So It is a fierce female bounty hunter who takes a job from her sworn enemy because he offers her a mountain of cash. And so they have to work together to find a missing item and then slowly fall in love. So it is enemies to lovers. It is still science fiction romance. It's set in space, but it is a completely separate world from my Consortium Rebellion universe.
Okay. Well, this sounds amazing. And I'm assuming that Baby Yoda is not going to be in it, but it still seems amazing, even with the lack of Baby Yoda.
I might get sued. Yeah.
You're like, Baby Adoy, yes. Okay, no copyright, no Disney copyright infringement. But that sounds awesome. All of the upcoming books sound awesome, and we are going to finish for the night. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Jessie and Nalini, so much for being here. It was so much fun. And everyone else, hopefully I will see you next date night. Thank you, Hannah, again. Hannah at Loyalty Bookstore. You can order your books there. You can order other books there. Order Jessie and Nalini's books, and also order other books. Okay, I'm going to say good night. Good night, everyone, and see you next time.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.